everyone, and welcome to TCPU's live interaction on standards and procedures for HVAC control, an IEC 60730 perspective powered by LERA. LERA is certified to have quality management systems under ISO 9001 2008. For more than 40 years, LERA has developed and driven the market for software that automates code analysis, software testing for safety, mission, security, and business critical markets. Household appliances are becoming even smarter, and the demand for new features is seemingly endless. In particular, the connectivity that brings remote monitoring or control from across the room or across the world is now ordinary. IEC 60730, Automatic Electrical Controls, is a derivative of IEC 61508. IEC 60730 focuses on electrical and electronic controls associated or used within the household appliances. For example, heating and air conditioning systems. Despite the increasing complexity of the products, household appliance developers need to ensure that the likelihood of injury to person or damage to property resulting from their use is very low, even in the event of negligence. The primary purpose of IEC 60730 is to define a process to ensure the above quality objectives by providing functional safety for these products. The standard is also applicable to relays when used as controls for IEC 60335 appliances. Additional requirements for the safety and operational values of relays when used as controls for IEC 60335 appliances are contained in Annex U. Today, on this note, Thermal Control Magazine is conducting a live interactive session on standards and procedures for HVAC controls and IEC 60730 perspective powered by LDRA. Today, LDRA experts will take us through the standards for achieving quality objectives by providing functional safety for these products. Ladies and gentlemen, we have two experts today to discuss about the standards and procedures for HVAC control. Mr. Vasant Kale, Embedded HVAC System Proficient, and Mr. Deepu Chandran, Senior Technical Manager, LDRA. Before starting the session, let me explain you to the sequence of events. Initially, we'll be having individual submissions wherein our guest speakers will present their talk on the respective topics. Then, we'll have a panel discussion followed by a Q&A session attended by both our expert panelists. I would request our distinguished speakers to adhere to their time limits so that all of you get equal time to share their views. So, delegates, get ready for an engaging session on standards and procedures for HVAC controls and IEC 60730 perspective. To take this session forward, I would like to invite Mr. Vasant Kale, a BE qualified embedded HVAC system proficient professional with 20 plus years of rich experience in research and development from various HVAC solution providers. He is an expert in developing firmware, software, and hardware for embedded systems. Today, Mr. Vasant will talk about the standards and procedures for HVAC systems using embedded controls. So, delegates, let's welcome Mr. Vasant Kale.
We will be looking into in short working principle of the HVCs and the journey of the window AC to the smart AC, smart connectivity in HVC systems, and the embedded development process, control system development, and the safety qualification standards as IEC 60730 in HVAC. So in this slide, you can see that the basic working principle of the air conditioner, which is like a basic of the thermodynamics, which use that vapor or the refrigerant cycle, which includes like the refrigerant is saturated by using the compressor to make it like pressure by using the pressure to make it a superheated vapor. And then from the superheated vapor, the heat will be extracted, and it will be achieved by circulating the water or air, and it will be saturated liquid in outdoor units, which again abruptly like reducing in pressure through the throttle of expansion wall, and it can go into the becoming a liquid cold refrigerant, and lower the temperature and pressure. And then it will be go into the heat of the include the space by circulating fan into the evaporator, and then cool refrigerator again will be back into the compressor to complete the total cycle. So this cycle is getting completed using like heat exchanger, expansion walls, or heat absorption units, or the process is completed by using the all these components of like HVAC systems. Basically, the mathematical model of air conditioner is depicted here, which is again like telling like how the heat is collected from the room, and then it is compressed in the refrigerator, and heat is sent outside in the outdoor unit, and then heated refrigerant is returning back to the cooled air in the IDO unit. So this is the working principle of the split AC. Basically, the initially when we were in 1990s, there were manufacturing of the window ACs, and it was combined together unit, and which was giving focused cool air and extraction of the heat, and the noise compressor, everything was together. So in 1998-99, there was like a conversion of these windows into the windows into the split AC, shifting the compressor outside of the room, and reducing the noise. So the IDO unit is the silent unit. And then 2000 to 2002 fixed frequency, which was like having continuous operations, and to achieve the temperature. So it was like consuming the more power, as well as required like time for the achieving the load target. So it is converted into the like convertible inverter ACs, and then it become more popular fastest way. The inverter ACs in 2010 is like completely it was like developed in the market, and fixed AC of split AC is reduced down. So then there is a need for like making it more smart air conditioner. Smart in the sense of like air conditioner itself is smart, and then IoT is come later 2010. The here you can see in picture 2, which is depicting like the fixed frequency type to convertible frequency type. The red line is indicating that the operation of the fixed speed, and the green line is indicating for the operation of the converting the frequency, and operating with the limited frequency. When you are setting temperature and you are achieving the frequency, it will be like stop, and then it will be again start if you are dropping down the load or the temperature setting for the achieving the cooling level at the room. So in present, the newest development is what like adding the connectivity part of the HVAC system, which is achieved by the 4G communication GSM technology or Wi-Fi technology, which give the more comfort of operation. So it is like easy in operation control, set temperature using the mobile, or replace the remote, and then thermostat setting can be happen manually or automatically. And by this way, like smart AC is collecting the data, and it is stored in the cloud or stored in the unit, and based on that data, it can capture the user patterns, it can capture the scheduling, it can like optimally operate the compressor, and then it saves a lot of energy, and gives a complete control on the system. Hence, it can easily accessible, as well as the data is collected, which can be analytically implement the artificial intelligence logics, and then it can make automated such a that it will be improved the comfort level of operating the HVAC system because of this IoT. And that is the easiness of nowadays, and that is more demanding because the connected device is increasing now day and day, and IoT is increasing in this industry also in fast trend actually. So next is like embedded development cycle. This is a standard cycle development where we are like treating as a product, where we starting with the product requirement and ending with the product release to the to the product integration. Means product I'm saying is a controller itself is a product which is can managed in this process as a product quality requirement, and then it will be like a requirement will be captured, it will be finalized the spec, then it will be generate the concept and then detailed design. After that it will be integrated into the product and test as per the certification standards, and we'll get the industry standard certifications similarly like IEC standard, and then it will be put into the product and generated as a pre-pilot, which again it can be field tested, and then it can be released for the production. So this is the standard embedded controller development process we called as W model for embedded systems. There are two V's, right side V's, left side V's. Left side view is for the hardware development life cycle, and right side V is a software development life cycle. Both goes in hand. After getting the user requirement, it goes to the like detailed design, and each stage there is an inspection and there is a standards of like verifying as per the standards are we like designing and capturing the requirement and converting into the finished good. And then it is like go into the implementation phase where we are saying coding as well as fabrication of the PCBs. After that it will be unit tested using the some tools. Now presently there are a lot of tools which can be used for the unit testing, like PCB layout testing, simulating, and then it goes for the implementation. And after implementation of the like alpha samples, it will be like hardware integrated testing, software integrated testing together it will happen, and then it will be system testing. After that it will be acceptance testing as per the requirement, and then it will be integrated into the product. So HVAC system is basically like having the standards. IEC International Electrotech Commission, which is coming out with the different standards for different products. 60730 is basically for the automatic electrical controls, which is used in household applications and HVAC applications. It has two parts. Part one is applies to the automatic electric controls to perform the safety within the household applications, which also checks like mechanical, electrical, electronics, or environmental related requirement, or EMI/MC, or any abnormal operations related things in ACs can be like check in this part one standard, which is like testing and diagnostic methods are applied in the labs to ensure that the operations of the embedded controls are within the requirement, and it is not unsafe for the user or for the product. Part two is basically for the like particular requirement for temperature sensing controls. It is include like the sensor as well as temperature controller both together. If it is applying part two, 60730 part 2 part 9 is the electrical temperature sensing control requirement is captured even by our BIS, and they are applicable for our Indian HVAC systems also, which is associated with the equipment like electric controls, heating controls, air conditioning, and similar kind of applications in industry. This is a combination of like using the HVAC systems with the gas, oil, or any solar thermal related energies also, or combination of that also can be applicable using the part two. This standard is also applicable for the building automation controls, which is again part of the HVAC systems. So this 60730 has like 20 clauses, 8 to 27, and it applies for electrical controls which are used in the offices, shops, hospitals, pharmaceutical applications, or commercial and industrial applications also. It does apply for the like exclusively for industrial process application unless it is mentioned in the document, but it is not like for the industrial application. It's only for household application. So it is like inherent check for the safety of the HV systems and operating sequence, where it is like qualifying the associated safety related to use as well as automatic controlling of the temperature and control used in the equipment. So this has a standard of like I just depicted here, clause 8 to 12. what are the different kind of check as per the standards. It is like protection related to shock, or protection related to like it is having properly earthing, terminal is properly connected, and construction, moisture related, resistance, electrical strength, heating related performance, like endurance testing, environmental stress testing, mechanical strength, as well as the creepage related to like distance between the PCBs and the critical components, and the fire hazards related testing, resistance to corrosion, like salt spray test and all these things. So EMI MC related testing. EMI is conducted immediately like EFT burst and this kind of testing, as well as like any critical component, maybe like the relays and the trikes related operation, as well as normal operation testing is done using these clauses. And if all these clauses are passed, then we will get the certification for IEC 60730-2-9, and then we can release this component or this controller in the product, integrate, and we can mark as like as per the BIS new requirement. We can mark this as a tested and qualified, and then it can be integrated to product and send it to the market. So this 60730 is only for controller, but there is a standard for the product. So in that product, it is mentioned we have to have this certification for the product to send into the field.
Moving ahead, I would like to invite Mr. Deepu Chandran, currently working as Senior Technical Manager with LDRA India. He is a graduate from Visvesvaraya Technical University and an ISO 26262 certified functional safety professional with an experience in the aerospace, automotive, and industrial domains. Today, Mr. Deepu will talk about the standards and procedures for HVAC and IEC 60730 software perspective. So, delegates, let's welcome Mr. Deepu Chandran.
Okay, so I'm getting into my session where my objective is to provide you with the software construction requirements from IEC 60730 perspective. So Mr. Vasant Kale was speaking about the smart HVAC systems that are available today with a lot of fancy features, as well as with an option for connectivity, so that remotely you can monitor or control, or you can do a lot of activities with all these smart appliances. So when we are thinking about the smart features and the connectivity that is available to the smart appliances, the intelligence is brought by software. So that means when we compare the hardware and software portion, so the functionality of the software that is lying in all these systems is huge. So that means a lot of complex software is there, and along with that, additional connectivity is also coming in the picture. So from that perspective, any failure from the software side is not acceptable, and we need to take care of the software construction requirements from a process standard perspective, which will promote safety and security. So what I'm going to present today is just to give you an introduction about IEC 60730 and the control class software. So where we will discuss about the classification of software for household appliances, or which are using automatic electrical controls. And then we will talk about the software lifecycle and the control software lifecycle requirements from a process standard perspective. And how do we overcome the challenges from these process activities implementation with respect to automation and evidence generation for certifying the final product? And we will summarize it with the key points. Okay, already in the previous session, we discussed about IEC 61508, which is nothing but functional safety of programmable electronic or electrical systems, which is the mother of all the standards. So here, with respect to automatic motor control or safety of household appliances, the standards IEC 60730 as well as 60335. So both are derived from IEC 61508. So when you look at the techniques and methods that need to be applied for the software lifecycle activities, these standards are having a cross-reference with IEC 61508. So the detailed table on the principles that need to be applied during the planning phase, the requirement phase, the design phase, development phase, as well as the verification phase is clearly referenced back to 6.508. So I'm going to talk about the process activities by referring these tables and give you some tips on how to automate these activities so that very quickly you can develop the software and you can verify it and provide evidence for its compliance with the IEC 60730 standard. So what does the 60730 standard provides you? So it provides basically technical guidelines which are applicable to develop and deploy automatic electric controls. So these electric controls may be part of an appliance, or sometimes it may be individual control which may be utilized as a part of the whole system. Sometimes it may be a mechanically integral with multifunctional controls having non-electrical output. For example, just for actuating a motor or just for cutting off a valve. So these may be some of the functionalities, but the valve cutoff may be a critical function. So you may need some software to implement it on time, on real time. So that may be the requirement. So in any of these cases, IEC 60730 need to be applied because in all these cases, we need to deploy the automatic electric controls. And it is irrespective of what is basically the mechanism for driving that particular system. It may be using electricity as a source, or gas, oil, or solid fuel, or even sometimes the solar thermal energy, or maybe a combination of all these sources to run the system. So from perspective of IEC 60730, it provides you a software safety life cycle with reference to 61508. So where the life cycle requirements are derived from the system safety life cycle. So ideally in the system safety life cycle, you might have performed your hazard analysis and identified all the uh, uh, risk associated with the malfunctioning of the device. So this risk, once it is identified, you may need to classify it and you may need to formulate some safety goals or safety mechanism that is implemented in the system. So the implementation can be from a hardware point of view as well as from a software point of view. So when it comes to software, ideally you need to follow the life cycle which is being given in the picture here. So along with the functional requirements, the safety requirements also need to be specified during the requirement stage. And the safety requirements need to be brought in into the design and development to ensure that there are no software fault or there are very minimal software fault and which will never violate a safety goal at the system level. So you may need to look at a lot of design principles which talks about the static design aspects, dynamic design aspects to ensure that the failures due to software is very, very minimal. So that is how the design need to be developed. And then again, you can see that once the design is ready, it may be available with a hardware software interface specification as well. So along with the hardware software interface specification, you may need to develop the software. And finally, it need to be verified at each stages to ensure that the specification is right. And the final system which is integrated need to be validated according to the safety plan. And once it is validated, it will be ready for production and installation, service and decommissioning activities go further from there. Okay, so this is how a safety lifecycle activities are defined, and there are a lot of details within these lifecycle activities. We are not going to discuss about the details, only an overview right now within the limited time. So now what kind of classification is there from 60730 from a control class software point of view? So the software is classified into three classes, starting from class A. So where the class A software are not intended to be relied upon the equipment safety, and it may not have any feature that can harm a human being. So even though the software fails, it doesn't have an impact on the life of people. It doesn't have an impact on the property or environment. So such kind of software is basically classified under class A. And really, you may not need to look at all the safety related activities when you develop a class A software. Example includes the humidity controls, lighting controls, the timers or switches, and all those related things. And from a class B perspective, if we look at, these are software control functions that are intended to prevent unsafe operation of the controlled equipment. That means whenever the state of the equipment is going to change, it should have the capability to detect the changes, and it should also react to that change by preventing it from a malfunction. So such kind of software is called as Class B software, and example includes the thermal cutoff, the door locks for the laundry machine, which we all are familiar with. And the next one is Class C, which is being the highest level. So these are control functions that are intended to prevent special hazards. For example, like automatic burner controls, or thermal cutoffs, or unvented water heater systems. So you know that in unvented water heater systems, basically if it is overheated, there can be a hazard and it can create harm to people, right? So that need to be prevented. So such kind of mechanism, including the error detection, indication, prevention or control mechanisms need to be implemented. So these are highly critical software and they are classified as Class C software. So now we have seen that what is the requirement of 60730, what it provides the technical guidelines and what are the different classes of software. So let us look into the details of what is the life cycle requirement for developing a Class B and Class C software. So in IEC 60730, if you look at the constructional requirement, so the software requirement is called as the software constructional requirement in Annex H of IEC 60730. It talks about software development activities, which will ensure that the software what is developed will not create a damage to the control compliance with respect to other requirements of the standard. So other requirements may include the EMI requirements or the EMC requirements or thermal related requirements. So all these requirements are called as other requirements from a standard point of view. And the malfunctioning of the software should not have a cascading effect on this other requirement. So that is what does the constructional requirements talks about. And how do we verify this compliance? The standard also talks about the verification techniques. Tests can be done for electronic controls according to the standard document. And how you can do it by performing an inspection or by examining the specification with respect to the documented evidences that is required from the standard process point of view. So I'm directly taking you to the process activities according to IEC 60730 for constructing the software. So you can see here the technical safety requirements are given as an input to the software lifecycle along with the hardware software interface specification. And here when you look at a generic V model, the additional activity is the red colored arrows, which indicates that you need to start your verification activity right at the requirement stage itself. So as soon as the functional and safety requirements are available, a verification need to be done, which includes reviews as well as establishment of traceability. And again, you can see even at the architecture stage to ensure that the architectural principles like encapsulation or modularity or simplicity or maintainability. So there are a lot of architectural principles that need to be exhibited by a safety critical software architecture. So verification need to be done for all these principles which are defined in IEC 61508 tables, because 60730 directly refers to these tables to ensure that these principles are adapted and these are verified with respect to the data flow and control flow. So in case if you have a model at this stage, it's quite easy to verify it. Some people may not have model, they may be writing down the detailed requirements and which are usually called as the software design details or SDD document. So in such cases, they may need to do peer reviews and again establish traceability with respect to the safety requirements. And finally, if you have a detailed design available, you need to establish traceability and verify it. And again, you can implement the code from the detailed design, which can be a document or a model. And on the right hand side, you can see all the dynamic aspects or dynamic analysis techniques are mentioned, which includes a unit level testing, an integration level testing, or the final system validation testing to ensure that no safety requirements are validated with the malfunctioning of the system that you are developing. So once it is completely validated by integrating with the hardware, the validated system can be given for production level. So right now you can see here the verification starts at this particular stage and evidence need to be created at all the stages. So the left hand side verification activities are analytical in nature and the right hand side verification activities are dynamic in nature. So what are the challenges in this life cycle? So there are a lot of challenges. The first thing what we have seen is like requirement traceability. So to establish traceability, you may need to use requirement management tools, but that also provides you traceability only at the document level. So how do you establish traceability to the source code as well as to the test cases and the test reports? So this is a challenging activity, and you need to generate evidence for backward and forward traceability also. The next one is on coding standard compliance. You may need to adhere to a safe or secure subset of the C or C++ language you are using for development. And that can be only done by ensuring that your code is complying with a standard like MISRA or CERT or CW. There are around 15 plus coding standards. You need to tailor it and adapt it for your development activity. And the next one is on code complexity. You need to ensure that the software quality is measured. There are a lot of formal methods and quality matrices, which includes McAfee cyclomatic complexity or Halstead metrics or structured programming verification, verification of the number of nodes. So at least 10 to 15 matrices are available. You need to choose the appropriate one, apply it, and prove that your source code is clear, maintainable, and testable. And the data flow and control flow. So as I told you, if you have simulation models available, you can verify the data flow and control flow within the model at different blocks, block level or at different module level. But in case if you do not have it, it becomes an objective to verify the data flow and control flow at the source code level. So that is a tedious job because many of us doesn't know how exactly to verify the data flow and control flow. So I'll give you some details in the coming slides. And then the structural coverage analysis to ensure the completeness of the test cases. So how do you ensure it? During the test case execution with respect to the requirements, you need to measure the coverage to see that there is no unintended functionality lying in the code. It can be measured using statement coverage, branch or decision coverage, as well as MCDC coverage for high criticality application such as control class C software. And all the tests need to be done on the target to ensure that memory and timing related aspects are taken care. And the tools which are used need to be qualified. Unless you use a qualified tool, you can't claim actually the credibility of the output that you have generated because the tool itself can introduce an error into your software or the tool can even fail to detect an error. So a confidence level need to be established on the tool or so that a certified tool or a qualified tool need to be used. And finally, the compliance management with respect to the process activity according to 60730. So these are the challenges basically by using automated, integrated, and qualified tools. All these challenges can be overcome to reduce the time to market with a distributed team available for the product development. So now we are looking into how do we automate the process and overcome the challenges. For example, from a specification of safety requirements. So first of all, you need to do an analysis on do I really need safety functionality in my product? So if your product is classified under control class B or C, definitely you need a safety functionality. Then you may need to incorporate the requirements for safety functionality, which includes error detection, indication, error handling, and implementation of the safety measures or mechanisms within the design. So once you write down these details in the requirements, the objective is to verify it at the requirement stage itself for completeness and correctness. So completeness, how can you bring in? You may need to do peer reviews as well as you may need to do traceability. Which can be within the team or which can be outside the team or which can be outside the organization with an independent verification and validation team. So traceability plays a major role. This is basically a screenshot from the LDRA tool suite which pulls in the requirements from different third-party requirement management tools and establish the traceability. So right now you can see a traceability established from system level to high level to low level and even to the source code level. And metrics can be available. So you can see the system level requirement implemented by multiple high level requirement. So all the parent and child relationship with the forward and backward traceability. And one of the requirements here, you can see there is no high level requirement that indicates that the requirement coverage is not complete. So you may need to ensure that there are some high level requirements derived for the software from this system level requirements. Now coming to the architectural requirements for developing a safe or secure architecture. So I told you about the design principles which are referenced in IEC 61508. So here what we need to look at is the data types that are being used, how the data will be flowing,
how the software will detect the errors, how it will recover from the errors, and whether there is a loose coupling between the software components. So these are the static and dynamic aspects. So how do you verify it? There are active verification and passive verification techniques. The software safety analysis can be done based on inductive analysis, such as hazards and operational situations, or FMEA, or software error effect analysis, or software error effect and criticality analysis. So there are a lot of safety analysis techniques to identify the error from a bottom-up approach, because right now we are pointing to the software fault and then we are going back to the system and seeing that whether a software failure can really fail the complete system or not. And apart from that, the design weaknesses need to be revealed, which includes static design analysis, including the data and control flow analysis, static code analysis, which includes code reviews according to the coding standard and quality analysis, and any kind of interferences or dependent failures. If you wish to analyze, you can even do that analysis. And passive verification techniques are basically an informal way where you conduct the reviews or walkthroughs with some checklist. So if a formal way of doing, you need to prefer it. Basically, an inspection need to be done by recording it through the change management or through the configuration management system. So in static code analysis, what advantages you get when you review the design weaknesses? Code review reports are available. So this is basically a screenshot from the LDRA toolsuite complying with the CERT C++ coding guidelines or MISRA C++ coding guidelines, which indicates that what all rules or guidelines are violated. And the quality review reports, which will ensure that whether the software quality is within the limits that you are expecting, and is there any issues with respect to the quality metrics limit that you specified during the specified through the QA checklist. So here is an example of cyclomatic complexity, which shows that at few places the cyclomatic complexity is going beyond the limit, and which is basically an indication that at some point of time the complexity is higher, and which may create some fault within the software. So code reviews, quality reviews, static data flows, control flows, flow graphs or call graphs, and anomaly detection can help you to reveal the design weaknesses at an early stage. So a lot of coding standards are available, like MISRA, CERT or CWE, and at least 15 different coding standards are available, and you are free to choose the coding standard and tailor it and apply it. Usually the QA or QMS team will be doing this activity as part of defining the coding and modeling guidelines. So you can create custom coding standards, custom rules, which will help you to detect the vulnerability at an early stage in the life cycle, and also which will minimize the runtime issues, because you are generating a quality code which is adhering to the coding standards. And how do you verify the static and dynamic design aspect through the code? You can actually have a look at the control flow graph, which will give you the complete relationship between the software components statically as well as dynamically when you execute the test cases. And also along with that, there are call coverage reports. So call coverage may be a new terminology for most of you. Call coverage is nothing but if I have a function X which is receiving 10 calls, I need to verify that all these 10 calls are getting executed with respect to the test cases designed by referring the requirements. So here you can see, if I look at all the software components within my program, I have 90% call coverage and 3 calls are not covered. So either my requirements are missing, or my test cases are missing, or my implementation is having something fault or error, which is basically not executing this. So the control flow or the call coverage will help you to identify such kind of design anomalies. And from a data flow perspective, the static data flows can help you to find out the anomalies related to unreachable code, infeasible code, dead code, undefined and referenced variables, defined and defined variables. And dynamically, when you execute the test case, you can also get data coverage. So data coverage is nothing but the data items may be used at multiple instances in the source code. For example, if you look at this specific variable in this file, in this particular function, you can see it is a local variable which is referenced in line number 197, 202, 209, and many other lines. So the red color indicates that these lines are not executed by any test case. So that means the usage of this particular variable in so and so lines are not executed by any test case. And in few lines, it is executed by some of the test case. So that gives you an indication that how many unused data usages are existing in the whole system, which can actually trigger for error at some point of time. So at an early stage during the dynamic analysis, you can reveal it, and data coverage report is a supporting report for verifying the data flow. So the generic functional test can be also done, and test cases can be created according to the requirements. So that is what the standard talks about. All the testing need to be done at the unit level, integration level, or at the system level. It has to refer it back to the requirements, and the test plan should be mapped with the requirements. So apart from automatic functional test creation, so these are just screenshots of the test cases which are created using the LDRA tool suite. And also you can see the control flow with respect to the test case execution on the right-hand side, which indicates which path is covered with the green color indication and which path is not covered with the red color indication. So in addition to the generic functional test case, you can also create test cases for proving the effectiveness of safety mechanism, because you have mechanism for error detection, error indication, and error prevention or control. So how do you verify the effectiveness of the safety mechanism? So additional tests need to be done for proving the effectiveness. So here you can see a number of test cases I have created basically to make sure that there is no software fault according to the checks which I have put in the source code for detecting a software failure. For example, I have a CRC check. I have safe data types which are used in my program, as well as I am using a checkpoint, alive supervision or a checkpoint supervision, basically to ensure that all the critical functionalities are executed by looking at the status of the checkpoint. So I can create a number of test cases for verifying the safety mechanism. Sometimes it may be in relation with the diagnostics features that is available in the hardware. Sometimes it will be software checks alone. So these tests can also be created by the LDRA tool suite, and you can actually execute it. And all the single point failures with cascading effect can be detected by conducting such kind of test. So in summary, what I would like to talk to you is about choosing the right techniques for software construction is crucial in discovering the fault, because the standard is referring to a lot of other standards like IEC 61508, as well as to the coding standards like MISRA or CERT, or even to the VNV standards. So there are a lot of standards which are cross-referenced within IEC 60730. So tailor your process and choose the right techniques, which is really crucial. And the static and dynamic aspects of verification of the architecture is tedious. So in case if you do not have an architecture, make sure that the static and dynamic aspects you are able to verify it during the coding or implementation stage. So design weaknesses or fault can be revealed by performing a static analysis check, which we have seen. And also a code level verification can be used to prove the effectiveness of safety mechanism by creating and executing test cases on the actual target. So in summary, qualified, automated, and integrated tool is an aid for safety software development. So if you look at the life cycle, let us have some qualified or certified tools for the requirement stage, for the design stage, development stage, as well as for the verification and validation stage. So that will help you to ensure that the evidences can be generated from a qualified tool by conducting the appropriate test according to the safety life cycle we have discussed in the beginning. So that's all about the software constructional requirements and automating the process and creating the evidence.
Is the architecture is required to be analyzable and verifiable and capable of being modified without compromising safety. So what aspects will further ensure safety and correctness in technical and software safety requirements?
So architecture of the control system for the HVAC is basic of the HVAC systems, which is scalable and verifiable till that coding standard as well as according to the 60730. And it is also the traceable. So it is verifiable easily if you can have the standard requirement captured in the architecture level and then design level and then coding level. So it is one-to-one traceable as well as verifiable.
Like, what are the best practices to improve software maintainability and reduce the complexity during testing and designing an integrated system?
Okay, ideally, from a software point of view, there are a lot of software matrices which can verify the complexity of the software and which can ensure that the software is exhibiting uh, the quality that you are looking at. So some of them are like McAvey cyclomatic complexity. Halstead metrics provides you with vocabulary, volume, and length. So there are at least 10 to 15 matrices available for calculating the software quality. So the QA team need to define what matrices are appropriate for them. What are the limits they are looking at? Because none of the standard talks about what is the limit of cyclomatic complexity in a function. So ideally, the QA team need to do an assessment on the product that they're developing, and then they need to justify it and provide an appropriate value. So then you can apply automated tools to verify the software quality, and it can provide you reports stating that it is within the limits that you have configured.
Yeah, nice that you mentioned about the tools. What is the need of a qualified tool for critical software construction?
Okay. Yeah, so there is a recommendation from the standard perspective itself with respect to the use of qualified tools. So why the standards are recommending qualified tools? Because the tools are not supposed to introduce any error into the system which can fail the final system. And sometimes the verification tools like LDRA tools, so they can also fail to detect an error. For example, there is a division by zero existing, and your coding standard clearly states about do not use a division by zero. Now, suppose the verification tool fails to detect it, that can have serious impact and it can even fail the software or the complete system itself, right? So the tool is not supposed to introduce an error and also it is not supposed to fail to detect an error. And many a times all these tools are software tools and there are possibilities which exist on failure of the tool. In such cases, what are the mechanisms available uh, to control it from a tool perspective? So if you ideally have a tool qualification kit or a certified tool, which might have addressed all these concerns and which will, your certification process will be easier because the evidence is directly you can give to the assessor.
Can you enlighten us the standard requirement to obtain certification for air conditioners and its parts?
Yeah, as we discussed about the 60730 is basically for the controls and electrical and electronic safety. Presently, like that is adopted by BIS and they are like December 5th, 2019, they are declared that we have to have this all the HVAC components like hermetic compressors and temperature sensing controller and motors. Motors are now like not all motors, but these components has to be qualified as per the standards and get a certification from third-party lab by the testing of the different causes. As I explained, like there are 20 causes for the temperature sensing control, similarly for compressor and all. And at the product level, there is a cause. So they're adopted the international standards and declare that it has to be there. So that is going to be applicable. Presently, it was declared on 1st June 2020, but now it is extended to 1st January 2022. We have to get this certification and then we have to produce. So without that safety certification, nobody can produce in India, as well as OEM as well as the manufacturers. So OEM in the sense of like component suppliers and then manufacturing people also has to have a certification. So it has to be standard requirement is well defined and certification has to be achieved and then manufacture the ACs in India and then sell out.
One of the delegate as well asked this question: does our country has sufficient regulations to ensure safety of HVAC systems?
The question was, does our country requires regulation to ensure safety of HVAC systems? And answer is yes. The certification is mandatory, and air conditioner components are already like declared, as I just told you that the QCO order for 2019, December 2019, it was issued. And now it is the voluntary, and from 1st January 2022, it will be compulsory or it has to be mandatory to implement. So this is declared by the Department of Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, Ministry of Commerce and Industry in Government of India.
Yeah, also one of the delegate asked the industry need to, is there any need to educate OEMs on adopting safety and security controls of
Uh,
HVAC systems?
Really, I think I can answer this live. The adopting safety is mandatory, so need not to educate them because it is a compulsion. So as per the compulsion, they have to be uh, for follow the safety standards and get the certification. Then only they can mark on their components as a IEC or as a BIS requirement license, and then only they can produce the component. So really need not to be educate them, but it has to be mandate. It is mandate, so they will follow all these norms of safety and security.
And when it comes to, say, software development, what coding standards can be applied for safety, critical software development?
Ideally, there are a lot of coding standards, and VISRA is very widely formed, even though it is initially developed for the automotive industry. But right now, it is very well adapted in most of the domains, including the aerospace domain, rail, or industrial applications, or even nuclear domain and medical devices. So ideally, you may need to look at the rules and guidelines and tailor your standard by referring to any of these international coding standards like MISRA, CERT, or CWE. Depending on what kind of product you are developing, do you really need safety, or are you looking at the security aspects as well? Tailor it and apply it.
Yeah. Also, Mr. Dibu, talking about LDRA, this company is there in this industry for a long time, and you are considered as one of the most credible and respected brand when it comes to the safety security measures. So, would you like to mention what are the other segment than HVAC where LDRA have strong presence in India, and what are the segments showing that observance of necessity of safety?
See, traditionally, if you look at aerospace industry, is the one where mechanical to electronic migration happened during the early 90s. So if you look at the aerospace industry, the DO 178B standard was available right from 1990 onwards, the first version, and there are a lot of amendments. So the requirement for developing safety critical software is already well established in these industries, aerospace and defense especially. And in 2010, new standard document has come out for the automotive industry called as ISO 26262, and again for rail application CN 50128. Similarly, there was an update on 61508 itself, and then again for the process industry 60880. So if you look at any of these domains, most of the domains adopted to the respective standards after 2010. And semiconductor industry initially adopted it because they came up with microcontrollers, microprocessors, and the basic software associated with it, which is the libraries and BSPs. So now it is coming as a package, and only the tier one vendor need to develop the application and supply it as a product to the OEM or integrator. So we are seeing a shift that anywhere there is connectivity and there is a safety coming up. So there is a need for doing a thorough verification according to the process guidelines. So even though primarily or traditionally we were into aerospace and defense from 2010 onwards, we are seeing a lot of clients. Right now, automotive is very well established. And the same lines, industrial application, let it be elevators or oil and gas. Now we are seeing that HVAC is also moving in the same direction. Initially, now you can see that a lot of chip companies now coming up with the controllers and the basic packages, which is in compliance with 60730. So you can very soon see the tier one and OEMs are also having the need of doing such kind of verification and validation activity to ensure that the final product is compliant with the requirements of the standard. So it's just an emerging domain, HVAC. But the other domains, it is quite established, I can say that. And we are seeing this as a new opportunity because there is now demand coming in from this industry.
As you rightly said that the industry is moving towards the automation and using the more features, using the IoT and sensors, and that will add the cost. But at the same time, like electronics is moving very fast, where we are getting the new kind of like just like discrete components are coming into the integrated chips and then becoming it like cheaper, and a whole operation of the like particular products is integrating in one chip, and that way they are trying to get it the cost reduction. So going forward, the features will remain, and it will be like adding the like new features, new easiness or operations and connecting data and all these things. That way, like the cost also will be get revised and it will be reduced down. So it will be moving very fast, but the cost wise also it will be get reduced, and we'll come out with the new technologies which can be like cost effective with the new features embedded into the products.
Thank you, panelists, for exchanging your valuable thoughts on today's topic of standards and procedures for HVAC controls in IEC 60730 perspective. It was indeed a brainstorming and informative session. We hope you enjoyed the session thoroughly. Before wrapping up today's session, we would like to thank our distinguished panelists, Mr. Vasant Kale and Mr. Deepu Chandran. I would also like to thank our editor, Mr. Prasad Nair, for taking this initiative. Thanks to all our delegates and our viewers. With this, we would like to announce the closing of our today's session. I request you to stay tuned with us to know more about our future sessions. Until then, thank you and goodbye.